So I was in Australia to do a training,
Mhm.
and then I flew to New Zealand. I'm in this hotel, and it just struck me that in order to train with me, to learn from me, it's a big expenditure of time and money. And I thought, I'm at the point where I want to give stuff away for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I literally, and as you can tell, my videos are all totally spontaneous. I mean, I have an idea of the topic, but then I just speak, spontaneously. And
That's what I love
sometimes
about them.
I laugh. I mean, yeah,
But
it's
that's what I love about them, because YouTube has become so overproduced, and so just being able to have someone who's just talking freely, there's no edits, there's no cuts.
right.
Yeah. It really adds to that quality in the morning when I play them. It's like, oh, Patricia's there, just talking about something. Yeah, freely. It's nice.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there would be so many people that would have been their introduction to ISTDP would be your videos. So I'm so glad you made that decision in that hotel room.
Yeah. And the intention was, to speak to practitioners to help them get better at what they do. But then I'm starting to get a lot of comments from ordinary people and people who are in therapy and who are not having this experience
Yeah.
and are having some really bad experiences. And it's tricky, because I say, I'm not in a position, I don't know what's really going on. I'll just encourage you to speak up and speak directly.
Yeah.
That's all I can do there.
Yes, I agree. I'm reading sometimes on different online forums where people are going there to talk about their therapy experiences in general, outside of ISTDP, just therapy in general. And you read some of what they describe about what's happening in their therapy. And you're right, you have to take it with a grain of salt, because I read it first as though everything they're saying is accurate. And I'm thinking, this is awful. How could this be? But then I remember that they may, that the way that they are relaying that experience may also be through their own lens of distortion, if we call it that. I mean, we all have that.
Sure.
So it's
Right.
a bit of both. And so I think that's always the right advice, though, is just, well, you could speak up in your therapy, and you could
I'll say, oh, I've been feeling this for 3 years, right? But never told them. I'm like, that's the whole point of therapy, right? Is to speak up. But yeah, there are really horrible things that happen. There was just, I don't know if it was a series or in the New York Times, they had asked people to write in about their experience, and literally, like a therapist who's on their exercise bike or eating, I mean, outrageous things. And I have even seen that on video. I mean, so some of it is truly awful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think the switching to online probably, there's an invitation there that it's a slippery slope. The frame starts to break down, and
It
just, going about their daily life while they're trying to do therapy.
Right. I remember when this first happened, right, during COVID, someone was doing research. I forget who it was, but I got a thing to fill out. You're doing virtual now. How is it the same? How is it different? And the one question that is stuck in my mind, because I think it's one that I notice in myself, even though I maintain the frame, the time, all of that, there's something a bit more casual.
Yes.
And I realize sometimes I'll self-disclose or, it's nothing terrible, but it's like I probably wouldn't have said that if I was in the room. I mean, it is a funny thing, and to be mindful of that.
I wonder if that's because we know that the whole body's not visible, if that makes sense. So even the way I'm sitting right now, I would never sit like this if I had a client sitting opposite, because I'm like, up with my legs.
Oh, right.
There, and there's something about, they can only see this. And so there's a bit more freedom around us, and then we can move differently. And I think that adds to it. There is a way that we hold ourselves when someone is directly in front of us in that chair.
Yeah. I mean, the other things that come to my mind are I'm at home.
Yeah.
Right. So there's something about your context. You go to work, you're at your office. you assume a certain role. And I also, will be talking to my friends in the same space, which I would never do in my office. So setting does matter. And I know quite a few people who are really going back
Yeah.
to the office and in person if they can. And people are starting to ask for that. They're saying, oh, can I come and do a block? So it's interesting.
There's a fatigue as well. I experience it. There's a particular kind of fatigue I experience if I do too many online sessions. This sort of like paying attention to the computer screen, even though it's a person, it's not quite a person, it's a person through a computer screen. It's quite different how conceptually to having the person there in front of me.
Yeah, I noticed that at first. I don't anymore. I think I've gotten used to it. But the other thing that I discovered, and it was through something that horrified me. So always when I saw patients, I'd be 100% present, engaged. I never took notes. I mean, I'm videotaping. I don't need to take notes. For some reason, without even consciously intending to, when I was seeing people online, I would start to jot things down. So I don't know so what happens, at least to me, but I think it's more than me, when you do that, your working memory, you're not using it. And that's one of the metacognitive factors that distinguish the best from the rest. Like I was always keeping massive amounts of information in my mind. And so it was with someone I was seeing, I asked something about her something that she had told me that was really important, and I didn't remember it. And I thought, what the heck is going on? And I really looked at what was it personal about her? No. And then I realized, you know what? It's because I'm writing the darn notes. And so I stopped that because if you're processing it, and then I'm not going to forget it. So
absolutely. That writing notes is one of those key examples of something that's very counterintuitive. We write the note because we think it's going to help us to remember, but in the act of writing the note, we are not attending in a way that will help us to remember when we need to remember.
Right.
Like it doesn't actually go in. We put it on the piece of paper, and unless we look
Set it into your intermediate memory.
Yes.
Right? Oh, yeah.
That comes with the experience, I think, of trusting the process, which will link actually to why I'm so interested to speak to you today as well, as about the creative process in your painting. But you have to build up enough experience, I think, which is scary for people, of letting go of things like writing notes and just being present and the messiness of it, to build up that sort of experiential repertoire that if I pay attention in a certain way, I can just trust that that I will take things in a way that I'll retain them, and parts of them will come up when necessary, when it's most relevant. These are trusting one's, I guess it's working memory, trusting one's own memory, trusting that we don't have to force it or compel it or work it in a particular way. There's a letting go and getting out of our own way, I think, to let the information come in. But that takes a lot of experience to get there. And
you have to be willing to do that, right? It's use it or lose it. So I don't think you can write notes until you're confident and then you can give it up. I mean, luckily I was trained analytically. I would never take notes and never did from the start. So you're training from the beginning to be present, to listen, right? To remember. And then also the other thing that I know I'm good at, and whether that's innate and then experience or what the mix is pattern recognition. So I will just see, well, wait a minute, isn't that really the same thing? And a lot of other people, when I'm training, they don't, right? Until I say, look at that pattern. But these are two of the really significant metacognitive skills that distinguish the best from the rest.
I agree. And actually, in finding ISTDP, I finally found a home for my ability to recognize patterns where other people weren't seeing patterns. Almost sometimes, though, it's to the degree that it can be distracting. I can get I'm seeing all these patterns and I'm thinking it's probably not useful to point them out to this person right now, right?
Right.
The discernment between, oh, pattern, oh, they use that phrase again. Oh, that's just like what they said
Exactly.
about their mother, or I can see it all and I have to still stay with the person. Where's this person at? As opposed to sometimes I just want to impose on them, I guess. Look, I saw a pattern.
Exactly.
I saw a pattern. Yeah.
Right. So the general, of course, there are always exceptions, but um of asking and not telling.
Yes.
Right. So is there a link here? Are you seeing a pattern?
Yeah.
Or like suddenly when you were talking, I just remembered again, these files come up from a session probably 30 years ago. It was a first session with a woman who had been horrendously abused. I mean, to this day, I think it's the worst case I've ever seen. But she had this memory. Which came first? It was putting somebody in a rocking chair and tying them up. But it was the second time, and I said, a rocking chair? Right. It was so specific. And then she was able to go, oh, it's that.
Just to even repeat the word to her rather than to say, look, I saw a pattern.
Right. That's the same. Right. So again, that us being present, attentive, but not in the driver's seat,
Yes.
right, is so important. And as much as possible to have the patient develop the awareness,
Yes.
right? When it's there, like that woman, what do I call her? Oh, the woman under the influence. So she had a long history of substance abuse, suicide, hospital, all that stuff. Anyway, so there's this huge breakthrough in the T, and then there's a link to the P, and then she sees how she has repeated this, and she said, I just connected that. I just connected that. I just connect 3 times, right? And this is a woman who felt like such a passive victim in life. And it was this experience of mastery. Like, I did it. I see it. And that's so important because that's one of the factors that when we look at long-term follow-up,
Yeah.
people developing that sense of agency is so crucial. And if they don't, and they think they're better because their therapist was so good, those are the people that tend to relapse. But if they realize, well, I worked really hard and I discovered this and I shifted that, right? It's much more likely to be lasting.
Yeah, exactly that. That's as you were talking about the softer ways to help someone see the pattern that you might be starting to see, the inquiry. I was thinking exactly what you just said, that otherwise we rob them of that experience. If we jump in and say, look what I just found, then it's all about us. We're the ones that did it. And we rob them of that because part of, like you say, I think part of what we're doing is we're trying to help someone get in touch with that felt experience of what it's like to have that insight, clarity for a moment that comes from themselves.
Hey,
And we
yeah.
can help clear the path to do that, but they have to feel that it comes from within them. I agree. I think that's the power of it. Okay. I wanted to speak to you mostly today because of this painting adventure well, I don't know how long you've been on it for, to be honest, but I would love to find out. And if you'd be happy to share. And also my understanding, Patricia, and I might have this wrong, so please correct me if I do. My understanding is that closer to the start of the year, you announced your retirement from TDP.
Right.
You went away to paint. You've been in France painting, I believe, pretty intensively.
Yep.
And then while you were there, you came to the realization that actually I do want to keep doing therapy. Yeah, and then you announced that as well. I think there's two pieces to that. There's your own realization, and then the telling people very honestly, oh, actually, no, I do want to keep doing that.
Right, right. And again, how do we make decisions?
Yeah,
How do we
right.
make, right? Because I think there were a number of reasons why at the beginning of this year, I was thinking, okay, maybe it's time to, it's been 45 years and, all these other people, even people younger than me, are all retiring and they're saying, why are you still working? So anyway, and maybe I was tired and I don't know what all. And so I thought, and my financial advisor was telling me I had plenty of money. So all this stuff, right? So plus, okay, to backtrack on the art. So I think I am an artist
Yeah.
in my essence, right? So from the earliest time, one of my favorite pictures is of me at about 4 years old. I was using an old shirt of my father's as a smock. I'm at the easel and I'm just beaming. And that's the way I still feel. So I always liked to do art. My father was an architect and he always wanted an artist in the family, believe it or not. And he kind of appointed me, right? So there was a certain, not a pushing, but an urging. And so I actually, even though I never felt that that was my calling, I never felt like I'm going to be a professional artist. And so I go off to university, but in no time, I mean, in my first year, I shifted to psychology. I mean, I knew that's really what I was meant to do.
What did
And
you
so
start?
as
You start doing?
at university, you're just taking
Oh,
courses.
right. Got it.
And then also at the university that I attended, within the large university, they had a small, what they called an honors college, which was based on the Oxford model. So you got to take these small seminars, you got to do research as an undergraduate. So I applied to that. I got in, I had wonderful mentoring, and I just knew instinctively this is what I meant to do. Now, I still took art, I still took dance, went to I did all kinds of things. But I think once I got into graduate school, the PhD in clinical psych, the Boulder model is extraordinarily intensive. And the average person takes 8 years to complete it. And I was just bound and determined I was going to plow through in 4 years. So I did nothing but, right, morning, noon, and night. So even though I've always been interested in art, I'll go to gallery, but I really stopped making art for decades. And it wasn't until it was after my second book was finished, my kids were off to university, and I thought, so Mondays had been my writing day, and I thought, I am not filling that up with patience. I'm going to keep it a creative day. So I just took a little watercolor course. I mean, I just started playing around. But it really wasn't until COVID. So in those intervening years, let's say there were 5 years, I might take a course or go to a workshop and I'd make art, but I never really made it my own. I wasn't doing it at home, right? I needed the teacher to spark things. And I actually found this remarkable course online. I'll give it a plug. Nicholas Wilton, Art to Life, Art, the number 2 Life. It's called the Creative Visionary Program. And it's an intensive 3-month thing. And it was expensive too. And I thought this was like January of 2020. And I'm like, I don't have time to do this. And it started in March, and I was going to be in Norway. So I thought, I can't do this, but it kept niggling at me. And so I called them And I said, I'm not even going to be here for the start of it. Should I? And I said, it doesn't matter because everything is taped and you have access to everything for a year. So again, having no idea when I'd have time, I just signed up. I go to Norway. While I'm in Norway, there's a virus around. Oh, we're closing the country. You have to go home. And at that time in the US, if you had just been in Europe, you had to be quarantined for 2 weeks. Well, guess what? I had Nicholas Wilton, and
Perfect timing. Yeah.
it was like an MFA. I mean, he taught all of just like we have our underlying theory and structure. I didn't have that before. So sometimes painting would work, sometimes it wouldn't, but I wouldn't really know why. Now I knew why, right? I knew it was the values were off or color or whatever. So I just took off and then I just couldn't stop painting. And it was a lifesaver for me during those days of which were long in the US. And I never had any thought about selling or anything. I thought it's just for my self-expression. And then my kids decide to move to Colorado. So I decide, okay, I'll go too. So when I was selling my house, I had a studio in the house. And the realtor called, she said, they're all asking if they can buy your paintings. They came here for the house. They wanted the house too. But and I sold like 21 paintings in one weekend. And I thought, wow, I guess they speak to people. And because I was making so many, I'm like, good, go, you can have them. Yeah. And then, that's just started to happen. So here again, without me trying, I'm in 3 galleries and I had my first solo show in November. And then as a lark, about a year ago, I heard about this residency in France. And I've known about artist residencies, and there are many famous ones like Yaddo. And, I thought I'm never going to get in, but what the heck? So I applied and forgot about it. And then got this letter, congratulations, you've been awarded. It's a grant. I mean, they put you up, they give you meals. I mean, it's just amazing.
The location, Patricia, was stunning that you showed.
It was heavenly. So I was also feeling like, oh, the universe is telling me, right, that I should shift. And so I had this idea, okay, now I have something new I can dive into, so I can let this go.
Yeah.
So that was my thought. But I am not somebody, and I don't think most of us are really, who make decisions rationally.
That's right.
And so even though I thought that's what I wanted, just like I'll tell young women, like you get pregnant, you think I'm going to quit and stay home, or you think I'm going to go right back. You don't know.
I have no idea. You have no idea.
You have the experience, right? So it was really only having this experience of nothing to do but paint day after day after day after day. And after 2 weeks, I'm like, hit the wall. And I'm like, oh no. And it's not enough for me. I mean, I love it, and even when somebody connects with a painting and wants to buy it, it's distant in a way. It's not, that direct connection with somebody. And so when I came back, so I was still like, I didn't really know what was happening when I was there. And it wasn't clear to me. But then I come home and right away, I was going to see people because I'd been gone for a month. And 2 of the people that I saw the day I came back were people who have been to countless therapists, all kinds of medication, ketamine. One has had ECT. I mean, you name it, They've had it and nothing has helped. And now they are just taking off. And I thought, why would I give this up? I mean, it's so meaningful and it's flexible enough. Like, unlike, I'm sure about my decision not to do training groups anymore. I'm not going to lock myself into 3-year groups. No, that's done. But this is flexible enough. And then I also realized that for me, the balance is so good between doing this and painting that just doing one or the other doesn't quite do it for me. They really feed each other.
Yes. Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
there's so much richness in what you just said. Where will I start? Well, I had wondered about, because there's obviously an openness that a person has to have to even allow yourself to see those signals, when you were there, to take those signals seriously, to
Right.
consider them in a particular way, and then to have the courage to just for yourself say, actually, I've changed my mind.
Yes.
Now I know more about, right? I thought I knew. Now I've had this experience. I'll take that into consideration. And then the extra courage is obviously that second step is also and just saying that, quite honestly, there was no
Of course.
papering around it of, like, it was just, that's what I loved. It was refreshing. It was just, oh, actually, I've changed my mind. I realized that it's not enough for me. And it seemed to come with such ease, the delivery of that message outwardly. And that
Yeah.
gives other people permission to
Yes.
just something about that I really responded to. I thought it was
Ah,
you didn't owe that to anyone, but the way that you did it was refreshing and enlivening in that respect, and inspirational. That's the word I'm looking for.
well, right. I mean, to be able, so this is something I think I'm only recognizing pretty recently and have been getting a lot of feedback around, and especially from women, young women, that they're saying you are such a role model to us. And could you talk about like how you decided when you had children how to do things? Because people assume that because I've reached a certain level, of
There you go.
whatever you want to call it,
Expertise.
expertise,
Yeah,
acclaim, whatever, right? That I must have always been driven, and not at all. I mean, first of all, I never dreamed any of this would happen. And second of all, like, my children were number one. I worked 2 mornings a week. I worked 8 hours a week, 2 mornings when my kids were little. You know, and so this idea that you can't do that and you're going to pay,
Yeah.
professionally, it's just not so. And so this also is modeling, it's all about self-correction. It's not about always being right, figuring out ahead of time. You can say, okay, I think this is what I want to do. You start on that road. And again, if, like you say, you're paying attention to how is this feeling? Is this a good fit? Do I want to continue that way? Or, you know what? Am I going to turn this way or even make a U-turn? Or, that it's so important to be able to do that course correction and not lock yourself in.
But these are all the same qualities, I think, that make a good artist. Like, to me, this is almost one and the same. And I think especially psychoanalytic therapy, it is art. There is
Yes.
an artistic process, and there's an extra component to that as well. But all these qualities I hear you describe, that they go hand in hand with what would make, I imagine, you a good artist, as well as a good therapist, as well as just someone who's able to make decisions in their life in a particular way that is not about some fixed end point. It's just the openness that I'm going somewhere and a sort of trust in it, but I can't know it from this vantage point. And so you have to be open and curious along the way to all the signals. And so much of what happens, I think, is we're trying to close down certain signals and just pay attention to other ones because those are the important ones. And
Right.
when I was thinking about decision-making processes, like what's happened for you with
Mhm.
retiring, they're not, and just my own, when I make a decision about something, how much of that I think is informed by, or we're prepared for it more, perhaps, because of ISTDP. So what I mean by that is some of the key principles around being able to hold complex mixed feelings together, not having to, right? The foregrounding emotional honesty, making a stand for one's agency and autonomy, being flexible. Yeah. Being
Mhm.
able to stand up and say those things, even though it might be the thing that makes other people feel uncomfortable around us, or they don't understand why. But the difference between noticing that in the other person and how we might feel about that versus what feels authentic to us. I just think
Mhm.
all of these things, for me, that's what's so different about ISTDP, is that those things are in focus. That's part of what we're doing with someone. At least that's how I see it. And those are also the same things that have helped me to feel that I am living more authentically when I am, obviously. So it kind of goes hand in hand. I think the same principles that we're probably doing in ISTDP therapy are hopefully the same principles that are helping us to be able to make our own decisions as well, just as people in the world. And I think are also part of the artistic process, that openness in a very particular way. So
Mhm.
I hear all of that.
Or maybe I would even just say a creative process.
Yes.
Because sometimes when we say artistic, again, people have a narrow definition. They'd say, "Oh, well, I can't draw or paint," or they have a narrow. But you can live creatively, right? You can cook creatively. I mean, it's a way of being. So it really infuses everything, right? From how I put my house together, a meal together, you know, how I do therapy. I remember again being in a hotel somewhere, probably Scandinavia. I had been teaching and training all day and came back and I was watching, there are these interviews. What is the guy's name? He's a very strange looking guy, but it's called the Actors Studio.
I know the
It-
one. Yeah.
okay. He is an incredible interviewer. He gets everybody to cry, whether it's Al Pacino, and any tough guy. He goes deep, he goes into the childhood and so on. So anyway, this day he's interviewing Tina Fey. And she got her start in improv. And she was talking about the rules of improv. And one of the rules is you can't say no. So if you're in a dialogue with someone and they say, "Oh my God, it's snowing," you can't say, "But it's not snowing in July." I mean, you say snowing in July, well, whatever, you have to go with it. And for some reason, again, a light bulb went off because so many of my trainees were saying no to their patients all the time. No, that's not a feeling. What, you don't say, and I'll say, okay, that's a thought you're having. And what's the feeling? Right. So first of all, it's like a yes, and you're not making the person wrong. It really has a very negative impact on the interaction.
It
And
closes a person down, doesn't it? Closes a person down because it's like whacking someone saying no.
exactly. And so it's just another example too of how immersing yourself, not just in ISTDP, right, but in film and literature and art, this is so important to your development. And then using these ideas from other sectors, right? And that's where the creativity comes, that mix. And again, whether it's painting or psychotherapy, there has to be a certain structure. There are certain rules. Now you can break them sometimes, but and yet using them creatively and flexibly is really, that's where the art comes in. So it really is art and science
Yeah.
comes together in psychotherapy for sure.
Yes, I agree. And yeah, there's a complexity piece to all of this as well. Like that
Mhm.
when, if you don't mind me going back a little, when you were in France and you're painting every day, what are the indicators for you? If I put it in that, like, how do you read the signals inside that let you know something's not right here, or like what's that experience like for you, and how do you
Yeah.
decipher what's going on?
Yeah. So one of the major ones for me is just my energy level, right? So is something energizing me or draining me? And so, I mean, I literally like hit the wall and I was suddenly very tired. And at first I thought, okay, I'm tired. That makes sense. I've been painting like a maniac. I mean, I made so many paintings in those 2 weeks.
Good, damn.
So I thought maybe I've just worn myself out. And I thought that's fine. I'll just go for walks. I can do little watercolors, no pressure on myself, right? And then I also had this revision of my first book that's due to Routledge asked me to revise and update it. And so I thought I'll just do that. I'll do some writing. But it hung around.
Mhm.
And so it was just some kind of funk, I would say, like low energy and confused.
Yeah.
So I was not clear initially what is going on here. And again, I trying to figure it out in my head is not always a good way.
Yeah.
So I thought and then because when I did that, which is not typical of me, like overthinking or trying to run ahead to the future. And I just said to myself, stop, just be present. It will become clear to you. Just live it. It's okay. So I tolerated not knowing for a week or 10 days, just feeling confused and kind of in a funk.
And,
And
and trusting though, that's why here there's an ability to tolerate with some trust that sits under that something will come, something will shift.
oh, I know it will.
Yeah, that's
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that confidence is so key.
And just look in your own life, because I think we have an inner wisdom and an inner knowing if we can listen to it, right? And get out of our head, the shoulds, the supposed tos, that, and really listen, to your heart and soul, basically. And so I know if I'm quiet and I give it time, that will emerge. And I also know I've had enough experience in life that if I ignore that or I override it with reasoning, it never works out. Okay, I've had enough.
Rein something in that's yeah. But so this is always I mean, I live much the same way. That this has always been quite innate to me. I don't know where it came from. It's not really part of my family system. I've always just trusted in the waiting.
Mhm.
And I don't things seem to work out for me in that way. When something comes from it, something arises from it, I can and there's a clarity. I love that you're using the word clarity, because that's what it
Right.
feels like. And I've been confused before to the point that I lose sight of that for a moment.
Sure.
But it's always been with me. And so when I meet people, and that is they can't fathom the idea of that. They can't tolerate sitting with that. They need to know right now. And almost that's a sign of maturity, that right now, and you make a stand right now. They don't
Right. And sort of, using your will but then you're forcing something, right? And trying to make something happen. So, yeah, I just had, I guess, like you're saying, faith that it would become clear to me. And literally within 24 hours of coming home, I knew.
Yeah. And it just
Uh,
sort of came to you. You just felt.
I mean, it was just so clear, like, yeah, I just had a couple experiences of, yes, this is it, right? I love this. There's no reason to give it up. I don't have to do it all at once, right? I can give up trainings and still see people individually. I mean, it
Maybe that
doesn't
was
be-
it, really. Like maybe that was the bit that it was time to say goodbye to, right? For you to be able to have,
yes.
focus on these parts. Yeah.
And again, these ideas, I think I had the idea, and I've seen so many of my colleagues do the opposite, right? So the trajectory would be you stop doing clinical work and just teach and supervise, right? You become that authority. And so in the past, I would have thought that's probably what I'll do. But in fact, that's not what's bringing me alive and what brings me this deep sense of personal satisfaction, right? And impact like the individual work does. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm
it's the
going for.
courage. Yeah, it's the courage that that it takes to be able to walk your own path. Exactly like you say, even though in the context of how everyone else around you might be doing it, it might look like the weird option. But this is
Yeah.
what feels
But
right. And people respond to it, I find. You can almost sense, well, I can, when someone is doing that. They're walking their own path as opposed to, I'm purposely going to choose the weird thing as a reaction to you,
right.
opposed to it's
Or just do what's expected of me,
or do what's expected.
right?
Exactly.
And so, I mean, I think I'm lucky in the sense that in the family that I grew up in, autonomy was highly prized. Being your own person, not being, and I can remember so clearly times when my mother would say, I'd say, but everybody, she said, you're not everybody. I don't care what other people are doing. Yeah, and even though I resisted at the time and I thought I would die if I couldn't go to that party in seventh grade, but I remember her also saying, I have no need to push you. I know you're going to be, I mean, so they were actually positive comments. But I think, again, I grew up that way also,
Yeah.
that you have to, and my father also, who was a very successful man, um, and of course wanted us all, was without question that everyone would go to university. But other than that, they had no need for us to do anything in particular. That what we were, I remember my father saying, you know, if you love being on the open road, you want to be a truck driver, go for it. I mean, it's you have one life. You're going to spend most of your time working. Make sure you do something you love. And 5 out of 5 of us, we all do different things. We're all successful, happy. So they did something right there.
Yeah, actually, you're right. That makes me reflect slightly differently on what I said about the family system that I came from, because actually that's quite similar. What you're describing is quite similar to what I experienced. And there's also something about, I was just thinking, there's something about my father was a very Greek man in a
Oh,
very small town, New Zealand, like, 50,000 people, the only Greek. And it was very much, but very proud of it. And so very much his own, like, I think I saw a model there of just
oh
your
man.
own person. And, people around didn't really necessarily understand. But there's something about that as well, like that confidence to just be who you are, as opposed to, yeah, feeling agitated by the people around you to become something different. And it's, yeah, it's curious to me when, I guess, when people show up and they really lack that, and that is the thing that we
Yes.
see so much of the therapy to find for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I have a couple people right now who have that so strongly,
Mm.
that they were so clearly told who they had to be, what they had to do. It was tons of pressure and it was very specific. Like, this is what's expected of you. And it's really hard for them. And in a way, I almost can't understand, like on a deeper, visceral, like, what's the problem? Just, but that pressure and that conditioning, and when you have that from such an early time, again, you never develop, you're not listening to your inner voice because you're told, we don't care about that. We're not even asking you. You're supposed to be a doctor. You have to go to an Ivy League school. You have to be an athlete. You have to, whether you feel like it or not, so that's really tough.
Yes.
Those people both to kind of quiet that voice, but also to find, they never developed
No.
that connection and maybe can't even hear it in the beginning,
Yeah, even know that it's a thing that's there, never see it modeled around them, never, yeah. I was going to ask you about the process of painting for you.
Yes.
Is it more your sense, it might be both, but is it more your sense that when you are painting, that it's like you're allowing something to work through you, like you're like more like an open channel where something comes through you, or it's very much a you of some, like you are wielding it, you are controlling, or it's like a mixture of both. Do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about the parallel, right? In the work we do, because sometimes I do feel like I'm channeling, like I have no idea how I know this but I do, right? And I'll say, I don't know why, but I'm getting this image, and they'll say, oh my God, me too. Right.
Yes, and that's exactly what I was thinking about. I'm thinking about the therapy experience I have like that too. So I'm wondering with the painting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I never have any idea what I'm going to do before I do it.
Yeah.
So it's something I really love, is that it's a process of discovery and also like a relationship. It's call and response. I'll just spontaneously make marks and then I respond to those marks. I'll choose a color having no idea why today, right? I want to use blue, which I hardly ever use. And I'll only realize in retrospect, again, I'll discover it on the canvas. It's a lot of my unconscious showing up there, and it's both my inner and outer landscape. I'm very sensitive to the landscape. So even though, again, I'll have no conscious thought, oh, I'm in Santa Fe, so I have to use, brown and gold, but that's what shows up. So it's fascinating. So I always start intuitively. And then eventually, and sometimes a whole painting will kind of come together like that. It's sort of magical. It can come together quickly. And there's what you have to learn is not to overwork a piece. You can
yes.
do something, right?
Knowing when to stop.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter that it only took you an hour, right? It's just leave it. Other things takes weeks.
Yeah, how do you know when to stop?
Again, people ask that all the time. It's just an intuitive knowing. And I had a teacher that said, just generally speaking, stop at 80 to 90%. And then let it sit, because you might go back into it a week later, but not now. And so one of the other things, which is interesting, and maybe there is a parallel, I never just work on one piece at a time. So again, not a good idea, because you get too invested and you can overwork. So doing series, like having 3 going at a time, shift from, I'm getting stuck here, go over here. And it's the same with patients. Like you don't want to, I have a couple of trainees who, for various reasons, mostly psychiatrists, who, again, they're having to do med management and all this. They only have 2 or 3 psychotherapy patients. It's terrible.
That can't be healthy. That can't be healthy.
You can't learn. You have to have much more experience. You have to, again, spread out, not be too invested in this one, going this way and being successful. And So there is a parallel there, right? And having,
Yeah, one way that I don't know, I'm just thinking about this for the first time, but I'm imagining someone who only sees one patient. And my mind goes to this image of almost being swallowed by that process. You would just get swallowed. You could just get swallowed up in it, as opposed to it being a part of what you do. I don't know if that makes sense, because it is a
well,
different
yeah,
relationship, but obviously a therapeutic
I
relationship.
mean, it's from forever ago, long before ISTDP, it was always advised that you never do that.
Right.
Right? It's dangerous, right?
I
You know,
thought that's blew my mind when I thought that sounds really like it could be so unhealthy. Yes.
right. So spreading it out. And then, so again, usually at a certain point, then you become intentional. You look at what's working and what isn't, right? What needs tweaking and what does it need? And again, you want to use that process in therapy too, where, you're in it, you're experiencing, it's call and response, but then you want to step back and say, okay, we've had 6 sessions where what's working, what isn't, right? And then you want to be conscious and intentional too.
Yes. I write poetry. I've done that since I was about 9.
Wow.
And I just have stacks and stacks of notebooks. And
Right.
it really does come to me. Sometimes not so much. Sometimes I really do have to sit. And it does feel much more intentional, and I really want to
Oh,
work it. But there are times when the words just fall out and I really don't know where they're coming from. And I was thinking about what you were saying about when you know your painting is complete. And sometimes what I experience with a poem is, because it's the same thing, I could tweak those words forever. I could,
right.
you know, but there's something about it's the stepping back, metaphorically, but also physically, actually stepping back, seeing the words. And there's almost a smile that I have that just
Yes.
smile. It's like a completeness. There's something
Yeah.
there and it's a smile, and that
Mhm.
usually gives me an indication that's enough now. It's not the same thing as saying that there's nothing inside me going, well, I could go in there, and but
Uh,
it's a knowing enough. It's almost like a voice that comes to me, like that's as it should be. It's a really interesting experience, and just hearing you talk about the paint
yeah.
allowed me to reflect on it more. But
Yeah.
I see it as a similar, obviously with a person in a therapy room, it's different because there is someone else to actually be able to speak more clearly back about where they're at and their goals. Um, but there is something about being a therapist that goes hand in hand with being able to step into that artist or that creative kind of mode.
Yes.
You do need the structure around it. You need the theory,
Mhm.
skill development. I think the CTA as well as sort of that is part of that process of giving it some confines and contours and some clarity from the start. And then the UTA, but it's with the expectation that the UTA will emerge, and there will, or at least from my point of view, there will be something that happens here that we are yet to know. And then,
Right.
yeah.
Right. So being open, curious, and again, discovering, right? Not thinking you're going to know ahead of time, right? What this painting should look like or what the therapy is going to look like, right? You're in the process and then allowing
Mm,
it to evolve and go where it needs to,
mm.
right? So it's an interesting mix of,
And I love that you spoke about color, because part of what I respond so much to your paintings about is color, the colors that you use. And I leave you comments telling you that. There's something about color that is very alive for me. I've never
Mhm.
spent long enough thinking about it or even going into color theory enough to understand what it is. But it seems to be, from a sensory point of view, color is very, very important to me. And it just, on
Yes,
a day in a given moment, one particular color will just feel like it jumps out from everything else. And it's incredible how that happens.
right. And
Yeah.
think about it, I mean, different colors evoke different feelings.
Mm,
Some are soothing and others are, enlivening. And I find in my paint, again, I didn't sort of realize this till a couple of gallerists told me that they said, you are a colorist.
Yeah.
Just have, and I've never thought about color theory. I don't take out the color wheel. I mean, it's quite instinctive to me. I do have a sense of color, right? Whereas other people just don't. They might be a good painter in other ways, right? But they don't understand. Like, I'm thinking about another painter, and I know, and I'm looking at this painting, they're like, something's off. And so even though they were using yellow and blue and green, they were all cold colors.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you need to warm up. You have the contrast of the warm, which again is just instinctive in me. And yet, after doing some really colorful paintings, I then do very neutral painting. I also love subtle neutrals.
Yeah.
And so, again, it feels to me, and I even in my first artist talk for this show, I started, with Freud's statement that we are so made, we feel in the contrast and not in the state of things. And all my it's about contrast, light and dark and bright and neutral and big and small and opaque and transparent and realizing all the layers. It's just we go through the layers and what's getting exposed and what's getting covered up. I mean, there's a real parallel.
There is. It's such an analogy of the whole. And you mentioned contrast, and what keeps coming to my mind as well as you talk about colors and the way that you hold them and bring them together is again this phrase of complex mixed feelings. Just our ability to tolerate and hold sort of multiple things at once and not.
Yes.
It's such a skill. It's I don't like to use the word skill, but it is. It's a skill.
Well, and it's a capacity, I would say, to tolerate complexity, and it's something that we have to actively do and really be on the lookout for this tendency to want to simplify and get really reductionistic and formulaic. It's a huge problem, right? Because a lot of people get anxious with uncertainty and complexity. And yet that's what we as a good therapist have to be able to tolerate.
Yeah.
So,
and discerning, there's something about that point, discerning all of that we just described from something that is much more a going vague, sort of going, because there's also the risk of, vague, I guess vague is the right term, sort of a going vague or going too big and wide. And now almost there is no meaning to be made. Like it's, and so there is still, there are two things going on at once. There is the opening up to the complexity, but there is also some need for a type of constraint. I think just because we are human and we are, there needs to be some, maybe it's the frame. There needs to be some frame that gives contour and edges. Otherwise, we could just be wandering around in a big kind of soup of, that makes sense.
Right. I mean, we need, a focus. What are we talking about here? Who, where, when, that sort of thing. But again, the danger of prematurely coming to a conclusion, right? And then trying to make the data fit, right? Instead of being open. And also, just like with the change in your mind, changing course, right? That as you're gathering more data, you're saying, you know what? I think I have to revise my hypothesis given this new data, right? Most people will hold on to the hypothesis and discard the data to the contrary, right? So,
and I think that's because people put some sort of value judgment on that if I was correct in my initial hypothesis, that says something about how, I don't know, how grand I am, or how, that I could know up front and I was right. It becomes about being right as opposed to trying to sort of really be open to maybe the truth, right? The reality, and finding that along the way, as opposed to thinking that we could know it right now.
right.
Yeah, well, I have just a few minutes. If you have a few minutes still, Patricia.
Yeah, sure.
It's a big question, but I'm curious what comes to mind for you. what do you think about the future of ISTDP? Like where it is right now? What's needed? Because it still feels like it's, it's this very niche. I think it's getting bigger. I think it is getting a bigger audience. I don't know. You have thoughts about you've been around since its inception.
Yeah. You know, I have a bunch of thoughts. So one is that this will never be popular. Davenlo used to say, ISTDP is to psychotherapy what surgery is to general practice. So it's a very specific, very intensive, highly skilled. So first of all the therapists out there, just like all the GPs, there's a small number who have the motivation, who are going to do the years and years of extra training, who really want to cut in, get to the core, So, and so too, not every patient needs surgery. So this is the other thing, right? Maybe they just need diet and exercise. Maybe they need some medication for their heart disease, right? Not every, so that's the other thing, to be able to assess. You're not just, oh, I'm going to do this, big intense thing, whether it's needed or not, right? So to assess who needs what. And so I think there's quite a large group of patients who's hungry for this. They're sick and tired of medication. They are fed up with CBT and know that just trying to change their thinking isn't getting to the bottom of things. So I think there really is a hunger for that, but there aren't as many, trained professionals as we need to be able to do this. And it really is a complex and difficult method that requires many, many skills and capacities, very deep domain specific knowledge, which many therapists today do not have. They have very poor education. And so without that foundation, right, it's going to be difficult just to learn a technique. And again, developing these metacognitive skills as well as specific. So you have to be really dedicated and be willing to spend a lot of time and energy to develop that. And a lot of therapists don't have that. So, and the other thing, in the past, very often people have said to me over the years, you should write a book for the general public. And I've always, poo-pooed the idea. But very recently, I've started to think, you know what? Maybe I should, because at least in this country, there are two predominant misconceptions about both the cause and the remediation of emotional suffering and psychiatric symptoms. One is pushed by the pharmaceutical companies. You're anxious and depressed because your neurochemicals are out of whack. There's not a shred of scientific evidence to support that contention, but that's what people are being told every day on television. And therefore, the solution is to be on medication forever, right? It's a very damaging and erroneous message. The other one is that we are all suffering from the effects of massive emotional trauma, right? And that we're terribly wounded and it's going to take forever, but probably we're never really going to heal, right? And you have all these people.
We're all victims. We're all.
And again, I'm just trying to heal because I'm so damaged. And this is a very destructive narrative. And people can heal. And it's not to say that trauma doesn't happen, but how you deal with your feelings about it and what you make it mean is either going to lead to a lifetime of misery or healing, right? So that's what we can do something about. So I hope that in perhaps telling these stories, it will spark that in people. It'll give them another option. So, and then the other thing just about like our
And
community.
just quickly, Patricia,
Yeah.
that right there that you were just talking about sounds like a brilliant book that you just described.
Yes.
Sort of the antidote to that, something that helps young women see that maybe the trap they're falling into.
Right.
And, here's the antidote.
Right. Right. And also, I mean, to actually see people who've been horrendously abused. I mean, raped by their father from the age of 8, beaten up by their mother, heal and transform and become these incredible people.
They're not sitting around doing the raging and the I just need to heal and
From the victim position, right? They're owning, yes, I was victimized. That happened, but I'm not going to create an identity as a victim. I'm going to deal with my feelings about this, right? And then I'm going to be a survivor. I'm going to thrive.
Live my life. That's it. Like, that is
Right.
the ultimate, like to live your life, right?
And not be defined or to define yourself by what happened to you 15 years ago, So, and the other thing, which is just an absolute dream, is I would love to do a series because all the therapists on TV are a bunch of wackadoodles.
Agreed.
They are violating boundaries, having sex with their patients. I mean, it's such a waste because film is such a potent medium that I thought if you could really have a good series based on real cases and people could see what good therapy is like. And the fact is, we're all more alike than different. There are only, 5 or 6 conflicts that we deal with. So they're going to resonate with some of these people and have their own. So that's a total dream.
I love that. I hope that happens.
I'm actually talking to a filmmaker about, we'll see. I think it's a long shot, but
it's so neat.
Yeah, I know. Within ISTDP, I think, again, there are different factions. I think there are some sectors that have gotten, again, reductionistic and formulaic. I really have a problem with people writing in and saying, oh, this is my patient, what do I do? Like, there's no way to know from a paragraph. It's, it gives a false sense of, but on the other hand, when I look at, there was just a Nordic conference, and I think almost everybody there, with 1 or 2 exceptions, right, were people that I have trained: Jonathan Entis, Jan Anders, Deborah Pollack, Peter Lilligren. I mean, they're all taking off. And everybody said that there was such an atmosphere of mutual respect, of openness, of, not orthodoxy. That makes me very, very hopeful about the future.
I agree.
And so I'm really hopeful about where it's going. And people like Brandon Yards, he's brilliant, and the work he's doing is phenomenal. Deborah, what she's doing with, postpartum women, what people are doing with adolescents, what Ange Cooper is doing with expanding into spirituality. I mean, there are a lot of really good people.
It's exciting.
Michelle is incredible. Jonathan Entis. I mean, there are a lot of really good people.
Yeah, it is exciting. It feels like there are lots of, like you say, lots of sort of new little pockets and avenues opening up in different ways.
Yeah. The next generation that's really coming into their own. Well, it's delightful to speak with you. I really enjoy it. So
I'm hoping that your painting will be here so I could have it in the background. Next time.
Well, it takes a while going all the way.
It takes forever to get to Australia. We're used to it. Thank you so much for organizing.
Oh, you're welcome.